Welcome back to the series where I talk about my absolute favorite books of all time. This is my 9th favorite book of all time. Here's your obligatory spoiler warning because I want to talk about this book in as much depth as I possibly can. The Demon Awakens by R.A. Salvador, the first book in the Demon Wars saga. I had the absolute pleasure of listening to this from Graphic Audio. Graphic Audio has some of my favorite voices, as well as just being fantastic all around for production value. This one's a treat to go back to every time. And its cast of characters are second to none in my opinion. Each one is compelling for a different reason and so deeply written. Even the side characters are some of my favorites in any book I've ever read. Once again, spoilers, because my favorite character in this dies in the first book, and it's a death that I will never get over. Evelyn Despres. We watch Evelyn from a young age go into the Abelican church and rise in the ranks as a monk, before finally he gets to go to the magical place of Pimminiquit to get some of the gemstones. My god, a lot of this will make more sense if you just read the fucking book. Once Evelyn reaches the island of Pimminiquit, he reaches an understanding within himself that is rare in monks, or anybody associated with any sort of church. He realizes that everything he's been told is a lie. And slowly, on his way back to the Abelican Order, he begins to put all of the pieces back together. And it's only when he gets back to Father Abbot Markwort, more on him later, that he realizes that he is in the wrong place and the Abelican Order is evil. Because Father Abbot Markwort orders the ship that he came back on to be destroyed, and every single person on it dies. Evelyn takes as many of the gemstones as he possibly can and runs away and becomes a drunk, hiding from the church, and the church gains more and more power. Evelyn really speaks as this character that stands up to impossible odds. He's one man against the establishment, or just the church. The church has a massive influence over this world. Now let's have a quick look at Father Abbot Markwort, who, by the way, becomes possibly one of the greatest villains ever put to paper, and so obscure as well. Nobody knows about this book. People are missing out because Father Abbot Markwort is such a great villain, and he doesn't start out that way. It's great. We get to watch his downward spiral. He starts out as just a harsh father of the faith, and slowly but surely he descends. And finally, in a very vulnerable state, he lets a literal demon into his heart, and that demon sits at the heart of the Abelican Order and pulls the strings. You don't actually get to see Father Abbot Markwort become one of the greatest villains I've ever read in the first book. It takes 3 books for that one to round off, but even so, you still see some of that villainy shine through. Most of the reason why I love this book is the escape from religious persecution aspects, and there's a lot of it. So most of the characters I like belong to the Abelican Order. Joe Jonah, burnt at the stake as a heretic for speaking out the truth about Evelyn. Marcolo Dionero was a great villain as well, although minor compared to Markwort. Quintal is the fucking Terminator. And finally, possibly the best redemption arc I've ever read, Brother Francis. He starts out similarly to Quintal in the way that he's dedicated to the faith and he follows blindly until a plague comes about and so many people die, and the Abelican Order closes its doors so that they don't get infected, but they are the only people that can help the people that are dying. And this is what wakes Francis up, and understanding that he can't change anything, he decides to be a martyr, and he goes out and helps as many people as he can before succumbing to the disease. He never got to see the change that he would enact, and the change did in fact happen. So many small story beats in this series I love so much. As well as a fantastic fantasy author like R.A. Salvador at the helm, I don't see why this isn't a lot more popular, aside from being a little bit past its time. And you might be thinking that this book is just entirely about the Abelican Order. It's not. That's like a third of what's going on here. That's just my favorite part. You got heaps of the regular fantasy tropes, like Elbrine gets taken by the elves and trained up to be a ranger, who's basically just human plus. There's a fantastic long story revolving around Elbrine's child as well. It takes a while for that one to pay off. But once again, this is all backed up by Graphic Audio. So not only is it one of my favorite stories, it's also an absolute joy to listen to. And for those of you that know that I am not a guy that likes fantasy, this is not modern fantasy. This one was written back in the 90s, and it doesn't fall into the same traps that modern fantasy does. I would love to hear your guys' opinion. Did anybody else read this? Will you read it based on what I've said today? Or are you coming back because you didn't want it spoiled and now you've watched the video? Did I convince you to read it before I even started?